Texas has some of the most unique native trees in the country, but most of the best ones, you'll never see them at a nursery. Back in October, I visited my friend Donald at Pollinatives, one of the best native plant nurseries in the state, and he showed me a bunch of rare, hard to find native trees that most people don't even know exist. A lot of the young native trees in my own yard came from that very visit, so you're gonna see some small specimens today, but that's the beauty of working with Texas native plants. Once they're in the ground, they establish fast. So in this video, we're looking at the native trees you almost never see for sale, but you absolutely should. All right, let's start with one of the toughest, most overlooked and underappreciated native small trees out there.
Well, we have a number of unusual things that you don't normally see for sale. This desert hackberry, it's very spiny, fast growing like any hackberry, but also an edible berry.
So this scraggly, spiky fella here may not look like much, but hear me out. Tree number one is one of the toughest, most wildlife-friendly native small trees in all of Texas, the desert hackberry. Now, my friend Donald showed you the basics, but here's what makes this tree really special. This thing is a drought-proof tank. It grows in some of the driest, rockiest soils in the state of Texas, from West Texas out to Arizona. The Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center says that it can grow in sandy, loamy, clay, or even high limestone soils. Basically, anything Texas can throw at it. It's usually a 6 to 10 foot shrub, but it can get up to 20 feet tall in the right conditions. So it doubles as either a large shrub or a small tree. But the fun part, there's bright orange fruits that you'll see on a desert hackberry that are not only edible, but they're a major wildlife magnet. This plant is also a host of the American snout butterfly, and even after drought years, we can get massive snout butterfly migration, sometimes in the billions, because of this plant here. And because of its scraggly and spiky nature, it provides really dense cover and nesting habitat for birds, especially quail. And as well, the fruit it holds remains into the late winter, which becomes an important cool season food source for wildlife. Now, if you want something a little bit more ornamental, but still tough and native, this next one is a tree most Texans will recognize on a trail, but rarely ever see in the nurseries. The Mexican plum is one of the most underrated native small trees in Texas. It stays single trunked, unlike many plums that can potentially sucker, and this tree can grow anywhere from 10 to 25 feet tall, sometimes up to 35 feet in ideal conditions. But the big show with the Mexican plum is the fragrant white blooms. These explode in late winter and early spring before the leaves appear, and they're some of the earliest nectar sources for native bees. In the fruit, the plum ripens from yellow to mauve to deep purple in late summer, and it's edible, can be used in preserves, it's beloved by birds and eaten by many small mammals. The Mexican plum is also a host plant for the tiger, swallowtail, and variety of different moths. So this isn't just an ornamental tree, it's a real ecological workhorse. And the bark, I think it's gorgeous. As the tree matures, it gets this satin-like blue-gray trunk with darker horizontal striations, one of the prettiest native bark patterns in central Texas. For small yards especially, the Mexican plum is one of the best native ornamental trees you can plant. And now, here's one you've probably walked past on a hike, but I'm gonna guess you've never seen it for sale. The hog plum, I think one of the coolest little native shrubs in central and west Texas. Most people have seen this plant in the wild without ever knowing what it is. It only grows about 3 to 6 feet tall, sometimes a bit taller, forming dense, twisting thickets with branches that zigzag in a bark pattern that literally looks like snakeskin. The leaves are a glossy grayish green, and it blooms with small greenish yellow flowers from May through July. It's native from central Texas all the way to northern Mexico, and it thrives in arid, brushy, limestone-based soils, the exact kind of poor soils that give other plants some trouble. Basically, if your yard is rocky, dry, and unforgiving, hog plum doesn't really care. And the wildlife value is really fantastic. The fruits on the hog plum are eaten by deer, javelina, birds, and a number of small mammals. And because hog plum grows as a thicket-forming shrub, it creates cover and nesting habitat for wildlife, plus nectar for insects. It's one of the best low shrubs for creating structure in a native planting. Now, this next one is one of the most underutilized native small trees in Texas, and honestly, one of the best additions you can make to a pollinator garden.
The golden ball lead tree, pea family, they tend to be more shrubby than tree. It'll get tall, it'll get 10, 15 feet tall, but very multiple trunked, very full. Really cool yellow puffball flowers. You get like a pea-shaped pod afterwards. The shape of it will give a lot of shelter for animals. Super fast growing as well. I have this in the parking lot garden. I planted a little 1 gallon like this. It's at least 8 feet tall right now and probably 6 feet wide. Very pretty in the summertime with the yellow puff flowers.
So I'm here with my tiny little golden lead ball tree that I got from my friend Donald. I think one of the most overlooked native ornamentals in Central and West Texas. It's really a light, airy, multi-trunk small tree that's usually around 12 to 15 feet, but maybe in rare cases it can grow to 20 to 25. It has delicate fern-like leaves and this beautiful cinnamon-colored bark as the tree matures. But nurseries skip over this tree all the time, even though it's fast-growing, extremely drought tough, and one of the best long-season nectar sources you can add to a native planting. The flowers are, of course, what make this tree amazing, hence the name golden ball lead tree, which produces 1-inch golden puffball blooms that smell sweet and appear after rain events, often from spring all the way into early fall. Those blooms are loaded with nectar. Bees, butterflies, native pollinators, they will mob this tree in bloom. And it's native across the Edwards Plateau, the Davis Mountains, and down into northern Mexico. And it's perfectly adapted to rocky limestone, sandy loam, clay, or even caliche. So for most Central Texas homeowners, this is a plug-and-play native tree that needs almost no water after being established. The only caveat is the wood is a little brittle, so just give it a spot where you are not relying on it as a primary shade tree. It's a perfect option. It's got a long bloom season, surprisingly fast growth, and nice dappled shade. Now, this next one is truly special, and honestly, most Texans have never even heard of it.
The escarpment black cherry. So cherries are a common tree, but this is the escarpment black cherry, so endemic basically to the Edwards Plateau area. Not a cherry like a grocery store cherry. They're very small fruits that I don't think they're edible for people, but the birds really do like them. And a very pretty, again, large shade tree.
The escarpment black cherry is a native tree found nowhere else on Earth except right here in Central Texas, in the limestone canyons and slopes of the Edwards Plateau. This is a hill country endemic species, a tree with a genuinely local identity. It grows into a beautiful 40 to 50 foot shade tree with a smooth, handsome trunk, spreading branches, and a graceful, upright form that looks incredible in a mixed native canopy. In early spring, right after the new leaves emerge, it puts on these long, cascading, lace-like flower clusters that are up to 6 inches long. They're fragrant, showy, and absolutely loaded with nectar. Then in the summer, those flowers will turn into small, dark red to purple cherries, 7 to 10 millimeters, that birds and mammals devour. And ecologically, this is a powerhouse, right? It's a host plant for an entire community of butterflies and moths, the eastern tiger swallowtail, the viceroy, Columbia silk moth, Promethea moth, wild cherry sphinx, banded tussock, and many more. Very few native trees support this many species. And in fall, the leaves turn a clear, bright yellow, one of the best native fall colors we get in Central Texas. The escarpment black cherry prefers full sun or part shade, rich, well-drained calcareous limestone soils, a little extra moisture maybe compared to other natives. It naturally grows in canyons, floodplains, and lower slope areas with deeper soil and better drainage. It can go drought deciduous in extremely dry summers, so maybe give it a bit of supplemental water when it's young. But once established though, it's surprisingly tough. As with all native cherries, only the fruit is edible. The leaves, stems, and seeds contain cyanogenic compounds, so treat it the same way you treat other stone fruit trees. Now, this next tree is one most people have seen in Central Texas woodlands, but almost nobody can name. that almost nobody expects to find in a nursery.
Over here, Bumelia, again, another unusual tree that you'll find for sale. Fast growing, very large shade tree, thorny, but if you want a fast growing tree, again with a berry that will attract a lot of wildlife, birds and such.
This is Bumelia, a beautiful, tough, medium-sized native tree that grows across central and east Texas. And it's one of our best hidden gems in our native tree palette. It typically grows 25 to 40 feet tall, occasionally reaching 50 feet in ideal conditions. It has glossy, dark green leaves on top, and if you look underneath, with the few that remain for this season, I can still see there's a subtle, fuzzy white, which is one of the easiest ways to identify it. In midsummer, June and July, Bumelia produces clusters of small white flowers that are sweetly fragrant and loaded with nectar. These blooms are incredibly important because they arrive during a stretch when a lot of other trees aren't flowering. Then in fall, it forms these deep blue to purplish black berries, oval shaped, that birds absolutely love. White-tailed deer browse the leaves and fruit too, so it's a great wildlife supporting tree if you have an acreage or a larger lot. Bumelia is naturally adapted to dry soils, sandy or loamy soils, rocky limestone, part shade, or full sun. It's actually more flexible than many other understory trees that you'll see in the open woodlands or upland forests, and even along drier edges or floodplains. The Kiowa people traditionally used a resin from the outer bark as chewing gum, which is where the name Bumelia or gumboli comes from. One thing to be aware of, the smaller branchlets can be spiny, not aggressively thorny like an Osage orange, which we'll talk about later, but spiny enough that you should give it a little bit of breathing room along paths. So if you want a native tree with glossy foliage, fragrant summer flowers, and excellent wildlife value, something tough, adaptable, and underused, Bumelia is a fantastic and unique addition to any Texas landscape. All right, this next one is one of my personal favorites for native screening.
This is Evergreen Sumac. This is like one of my absolute favorite evergreen. It's more shrub than tree, so it's like a perfect evergreen screen, privacy screen. Also makes a little berry. All sumacs are male, female. These are too small for me to know if they're male, female, but they're all very pretty. Shiny, glossy green leaves year round. It'll get 10, 12 feet high pretty quickly. Provides a nice screen if you're trying to not look at your neighbors or not let your neighbors look at you. Very hard to find in the nursery trade, very difficult to find. They don't like to grow in pots, but once you have them, if you have a female and a male, they will pop up in your yard pretty readily, but they just do not like to grow in pots. So very hard to find these for sale. We have a few.
Evergreen sumac is one of the most useful native shrubs we have in Central and West Texas. It's typically 6 to 10 feet tall, but it can take on a tree-like form with a long, straight trunk if you let it. The foliage is glossy, a little leathery, and here's one of my favorite details. In early spring, the new leaves flush with a slight pink tint. And after our first frost, the whole plant shifts to a deep maroon before replacing its foliage almost immediately. So it's technically not evergreen, but it certainly behaves like an evergreen, dropping leaves only briefly before replacing them within a week. That makes it one of the most reliable year-round screening plants for native landscapes. In summer, usually July and August, evergreen sumac produces clusters of small greenish-white flowers that are extremely valuable for native bees and butterflies. Then in mid-September, the fruit ripens into bright orange-red drupes that are covered in a little fine hair. Birds absolutely love these, especially when other food sources are scarce. And a fun fact, you can soak the berries in water to make a tart vitamin C-rich tea. Evergreen sumac is native to rocky slopes, bluffs, and dry hillsides, the exact areas in Texas that burn up other shrubs. It thrives in sun or even some part shade, dry soils, sandy loam, clay loam, limestone, even caliche. It's fast growing, drought tolerant, and generally pest free. As mentioned, it's excellent for wildlife. The flowers feed butterflies, the fruit feeds birds and mammals, the shrub provides cover and nesting structure. It even provides materials for native bee nesting, which is a huge bonus. Because the evergreen sumac grows thick and full, this one here is a shrub that I put in the ground last year. It's one of the best native hedge or screening plants that you can grow in Central Texas. It just doesn't love being confined in a pot, something important to know. But once it's in the ground though, usually the evergreen sumac will take off. So if you ever see one for sale, I always tell people, grab it. It's one of the best, toughest, most reliable evergreen natives that you can add to your yard. All right, this next tree is a total departure from the last few. It's rugged, ancient, and honestly, one of the most fascinating native trees in all of Texas. Okay, the Osage orange, also called the bodark or hedge apple. It's thorny, tough, drought-proof, and grows like crazy. But the story behind this tree, I think, is what makes it one of the most interesting natives, not just in Texas, but on the continent. So I actually don't have this specimen on my property, so I'm gonna let my friend Scott Anderson, an arborist here in San Antonio, the owner of Urban Tree Company, someone who knows trees better than most people I know, explain to you more. And I'm gonna go look for the next tree on my property I'm gonna share with you after.
We've got Osage orange, which is the hedge apple. It produces, it's a relative of the mulberry. It produces basically this gigantic softball-sized mulberry. And those also evolved along with the giant ground sloths and the woolly mammoths. And really those were the ones that were spreading the seeds, and they almost went extinct until people decided to plant them for hedgerows. So this is Osage orange. You know, and it's got the you know, you can see the little bits of orange bark coming out there, and really pretty trees. And then this whole thing at one point this year was just littered with the hedge apples. You know, they decompose and go back in and then sprout back up, but pretty neat, I like these trees.
Does anything eat those? I know they're like rock hard.
So they're rock hard, they start to decompose. I would imagine that the wild pigs eat them, although not in the volume. I mean, this year there was a massive amount of them, and it wasn't like they just disappeared. Like, you know, whereas like the mulberries, you could see that things were quickly eating the mulberries as they fell. This is probably not an ideal food. Like I said, I think that really it was only the woolly mammoths and the ground sloths that ate them and spread their seeds. And so then they're, you know, because they weren't being eaten and decomposed, they weren't really spreading until people started planting them.
Okay, now to our last tree. We're ending on something a little more ornamental, but still incredibly drought tolerant and perfectly adapted to much of Texas. So the desert willow isn't truly rare, but it is wildly underused. It's one of the most beautiful native ornamental trees in all of Texas. It's got these long willow-like leaves. It ends up having stunning trumpet-shaped blooms and hummingbirds all over it. And its drought tolerance is really off the charts. It's native across South and West Texas, down into northern Mexico, and west all the way to Southern California, which gives you a sense of how tough and adaptable this plant really is. So the desert willow thrives in dry washes, arroyos, riverbanks, limestone soils, sands, clays, caliche, even a very granite-based soil. It's one of the few small trees that can handle brutal heat and really unpredictable rainfall without even blinking. The flowers are really what sell the desert willow. They bloom heaviest in May and June, but the desert willow will throw out blooms all the way through September and October after some of those summer rains. You can see some of the flowers range in color from white to pink to deep purple, even some two-tone blooms on occasion. They're fragrant, nectar-rich, and absolutely hammered by hummingbirds and butterflies. The desert willow usually tops out at 15 to 30 feet, but it sometimes can push 40 feet in its ideal conditions. You can prune it multi-trunk or train it into a single trunk if you want it to have a more formal small tree look. The desert willow actually blooms more if you let the soil dry out between waterings. So too much water or even fertilizer, you're gonna get big leafy growth and fewer blooms. Most likely, it's best to just leave it alone. It can handle cold down to about 10 degrees, which makes it a great choice for most of Central and South Texas. It's a great wildlife tree. Again, hummingbirds are drawn to it, butterflies are drawn to it, and a number of beneficial insects as well. Strangely enough, historically, its wood was used for bows and basketry, which maybe makes it a perfect pairing with the Osage orange that we just talked about. So if you want a native tree that's beautiful, heat tolerant, pollinator friendly, and stays the right size for most Texas yards, desert willow is one of the very best choices that you can make. Okay, so we talked all the trees, but if you're still with me, let's talk about why we don't see these trees more often in nurseries. It's not because they're bad trees, obviously, far from it. So, some of these natives grow slowly in pots. Some just don't look impressive in a 1-gallon container. Some are thorny, and some, like the Evergreen Sumac, maybe absolutely hate being confined. But there's another part to this. These trees aren't always easy to source, grow, or propagate, especially at scale. And honestly, most big box stores like Home Depot or Lowe's aren't thinking about the ecological impact of the plants that they sell. Maybe they'll swap out a few species region to region, but at the end of the day, they're not building their inventory around what supports our local ecosystems. That's why small, independent, native plant nurseries are so important. They're the ones doing the hard, honestly, often less commercially viable work to grow and source these species. The ones that are preserving our local ecologies. The ones helping us all rebuild wildlife habitat that's co-evolved with these plants for thousands of years. And they're the ones keeping our home landscapes truly tied to the regions that we all call home. So, if you want these trees to stay part of Texas, and I know you do, and if you want your yard to actually support the wildlife that belongs here, and I know you do, supporting nurseries like Pollinatives matters. Most of the young trees that you've seen in my yard today came from my friend Donald at Pollinatives. At Pollinatives and nurseries like it, I've recommended a few others on the channel here before. They are doing the hard work that big box stores simply aren't. So if you stop by Pollinatives in Central Texas, tell those folks that Cory sent you, and I've included a link in the description to where you can find them. All right, y'all, I'm excited for you to get those trees in the ground. Let me know if you have any of these already, or which of these you'll be searching for now in the comments below. Lastly, if you want help building a native landscape of your own, I put together a free 7-day email series that walks through everything I wish I'd known when I'd started. It'll save you time, money, and a lot of frustration. The link is in the description, or you can go to coryames.com/txnative. And if you want to go even deeper behind the scenes with plant lists, Q&As, and early access to different content, helping support this kind of work, you can join my Patreon community. Your support and enthusiasm really does make these videos possible. I'm Cory Ames, y'all. Thanks for watching. Sun's going down. Thanks for caring about Texas, and I'll see you in the next one.